The story of Africa's technological rise has long been overshadowed by narratives of dependency on external powers, where the continent was viewed primarily as a consumer rather than a creator of digital infrastructure. Yet in recent years, a transformation has been quietly brewing beneath the surface, one that carries the potential to dramatically reshape not just Africa's place in the global digital economy, but also the dominance of Silicon Valley tech giants that have come to define the Internet itself. At the center of this unfolding revolution is the vision for a continental Internet exchange, an integrated digital network designed to keep Africa's data, traffic, and connectivity within Africa instead of routing it through Europe or the United States. For decades, African Internet traffic has been forced to make long journeys across undersea cables to data centers in London, Paris, or New York, before returning back to users in Lagos, Nairobi, or Johannesburg. This architecture has meant slower speeds, higher costs, and a fundamental reliance on foreign intermediaries who benefit from Africa's growing digital economy. The creation of an Africa-wide Internet exchange is therefore more than a technical adjustment. It represents a strategic leap, one that challenges not only the financial models of Western technology firms, but also the very architecture of global digital power. The implications of this move stretch far beyond faster video calls or smoother streaming services. They strike at the business models of corporations like Google, Amazon, and Meta, which have for years harvested data and routed services through their own networks, extracting value while offering Africa access at a price. The rise of a continental Internet exchange threatens to invert this relationship by ensuring that African data remains in Africa, processed by African servers, governed by African policies, and monetized in ways that benefit African citizens first. It is a direct challenge to digital colonialism, the subtle but pervasive system where global powers control access, infrastructure, and platforms, leaving Africa perpetually dependent on outsiders. The idea of continental integration in Internet infrastructure is not new, but its urgency has grown with Africa's demographic explosion. With more than 1.4 billion people, the continent represents one of the largest untapped markets for digital services in the world. By 2030, Africa is projected to have more young people online than any other region, making it the beating heart of the global digital future. Yet this demographic dividend will only become a reality if the digital backbone of Africa is owned and operated by Africans. Otherwise, the continent risks repeating the historical pattern where its raw resources are exported cheaply, processed abroad, and sold back at a premium. In the digital age, the raw resource is data, and whoever controls its flow controls the economy of the future. Google, which currently operates some of the largest subsea cable projects connecting Africa, including the Equiano cable, has long positioned itself as a partner in Africa's connectivity revolution. Its public message is one of empowerment, promising faster internet and lower prices for millions of Africans. But beneath the polished rhetoric lies a strategic play. By controlling the routes and infrastructure, Google also controls access, pricing models, and the flow of data that fuels its advertising empire. If Africa builds its own Internet exchange, bypassing the need for Google's infrastructure, the economic logic underpinning these investments begins to unravel. This is why the notion of an African digital backbone is so threatening to Silicon Valley. It is not simply a competitor. It is a restructuring of the digital order that could reduce the relevance of global giants within Africa's borders. The first step toward this revolution lies in regional cooperation. For years, Africa's internet landscape has been fragmented, with each country building isolated networks, often lacking coordination with their neighbors. Cross-border data exchange was rare, and traffic often had to travel thousands of kilometers abroad before returning to a server located in the next country over. The African Union has recognized this inefficiency and is now pushing for harmonized policies that encourage interconnected data centers, shared internet exchange points, and the creation of a continental digital highway. This push mirrors broader continental ambitions seen in projects like the African Continental Free Trade Area, which seeks to break down barriers to commerce and integrate African economies into a single market. Just as the Free Trade Area envisions the free flow of goods, the Digital Integration Project envisions the free flow of data within Africa. As these initiatives gain momentum, African governments are also waking up to the strategic importance of digital sovereignty. Leaders from countries like Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, and Rwanda have begun to prioritize investment in local data centers, regional fiber networks, and homegrown cloud computing solutions. For them, the Internet is no longer a luxury but a vital infrastructure on par with electricity and roads. Without control over the digital rails of the future, no country can truly claim independence in the 21st century. Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso has been particularly vocal about the dangers of outsourcing Africa's digital lifeline to foreign corporations. His calls for African ownership over digital infrastructure echo the broader Pan-Africanist sentiment that independence must extend beyond politics into technology, finance, and information flows. What makes the African Internet exchange particularly disruptive is that it undermines one of the most profitable aspects of Silicon Valley's business model: data monopolization. Companies like Google and Meta thrive on collecting vast amounts of user information, which they process in massive data centers largely located outside Africa. This data is then used to refine targeted advertising, the core engine of their revenue. But if Africa's traffic remains on the continent, stored in African-owned centers, then the extraction of that value becomes much harder. Suddenly, local entrepreneurs and companies gain access to the raw data they need to build African alternatives to Google Search, YouTube, or Facebook. The monopoly breaks down and competition flourishes. This is why the rise of a continental exchange is not just a technical adjustment, but a tectonic shift in the global balance of power. The Western pushback has already begun, though it often takes subtle forms. Lobbying efforts, trade agreements, and development aid packages are increasingly tied to digital infrastructure commitments that favor Western firms. Africa is being offered subsidized access to global platforms in exchange for allowing these firms to continue harvesting data. But more and more leaders are starting to see the trap. Cheap internet today may mean digital servitude tomorrow. The awareness that Africa must control its own pipes, cables, and servers is growing. And with it comes a new assertiveness in negotiations with global players. Instead of begging for connectivity, African states are demanding partnerships that respect their sovereignty. The technological backbone required for a continental exchange is massive, but it is not beyond Africa's reach. Already, data centers are expanding in key hubs like Lagos, Nairobi, and Johannesburg. Local internet exchange points have multiplied from just a handful 2 decades ago to over 40 today. And traffic is increasingly being kept local. The next stage is to interconnect these national hubs into a seamless continental grid. This will require billions of dollars in investment, but it also promises billions in savings by reducing dependency on international bandwidth. Moreover, by shortening the distance data must travel, latency will drop, enabling new industries such as gaming, telemedicine, and cloud services to flourish locally. Consider the symbolic power of an African startup competing with Google, not from Silicon Valley, but from Accra or Addis Ababa. With the data and traffic staying within Africa, these companies would have the foundation they need to innovate, customize services for local needs, and scale across borders. Suddenly, Africa is no longer just a market for global technology, it becomes a producer of technology itself. That possibility terrifies established players who have grown used to an asymmetric system where innovation flows from north to south. and wealth flows in the opposite direction. The consequences extend beyond economics into geopolitics. In an era where data is often described as the new oil, the location of servers and the control of digital infrastructure becomes a matter of national security. African countries that rely on foreign servers risk exposure to surveillance, manipulation, and coercion. The revelations of widespread digital spying by foreign powers have only reinforced the urgency of owning the infrastructure. A continental internet exchange therefore doubles as a shield against external interference, granting Africa greater leverage on the international stage. By building its own digital fortress, Africa can negotiate with the rest of the world from a position of strength rather than dependence. But the road ahead is not without challenges. Building a continental internet exchange requires immense coordination among diverse countries with varying levels of development, governance, and political stability. Trust deficits, competing interests, and lack of infrastructure funding could slow progress. Western corporations will not sit idly by as their dominance is threatened. They will continue to lobby, invest selectively, and create incentives designed to keep African traffic flowing through their networks. The question is whether African leaders will have the unity and determination to resist these pressures and prioritize the long-term vision over short-term gains. Still, history offers reasons for optimism. Africa has already demonstrated its ability to leapfrog traditional development pathways. The continent bypassed landline telephones and jumped straight to mobile phones, creating one of the world's fastest-growing mobile economies. It pioneered mobile money services like M-Pesa, which revolutionized financial inclusion long before Silicon Valley caught on. The same leapfrogging logic could apply to digital infrastructure. Instead of relying indefinitely on Western-controlled backbones, Africa could design a 21st-century internet that is faster, cheaper, and more secure than the systems currently in place elsewhere. As the pieces fall into place, the world is beginning to take notice. Analysts in Europe and the United States warn that Africa's push for digital independence could fragment the global internet, creating parallel ecosystems that challenge Western hegemony. But from an African perspective, this fragmentation is liberation. It is the long overdue correction of an imbalance that has persisted since the dawn of the digital age. For the first time, Africa would not simply be connected to the internet, it would help define what the internet is. In practical terms, this could mean African-owned platforms rising to global prominence, just as Chinese companies like Tencent and Alibaba emerged from a similar environment of digital sovereignty. It could mean African nations negotiating with tech giants on equal terms, demanding fairer revenue sharing, and setting the rules for how data is collected and monetized. It could mean that the next billion internet users, most of whom will come from Africa, join a network that reflects African priorities rather than Western interests. The idea that Africa's continental internet exchange could destroy Google may sound exaggerated, but it reflects a deeper truth. Monopolies do not last forever. They are products of specific historical conditions, and they fall when those conditions change. For Google, the condition that made its dominance possible was unfettered access to global data flows, including those from Africa. If Africa shuts the gate and begins to harvest its own data for its own benefit, the engine that powers Google's empire begins to sputter. The fall may not be immediate, but the trajectory is clear. The rise of African digital sovereignty represents the beginning of the end of an era where one company could claim to organize all the world's information. What lies ahead is not just a battle over technology, but a contest over values. Will the internet continue to be dominated by corporate interests driven by profit at all costs, or will it evolve into a multipolar system where regions like Africa assert their right to shape its future? The emergence of a continental internet, Exchange suggests that Africa is choosing the latter, and in doing so, it is sending a powerful message to the rest of the world. The age of dependency is over, and the digital future belongs to those who have the courage to build it for themselves.